The life of a professional pugilist is not necessarily perfect. Despite being elite athletes, they are human beings who tend to make mistakes more often than you might expect. And this one, when he decided to mock none other than Canelo Alvarez, had to pay the harshest consequences. Don't believe me? Stay until the end to discover the sadistic and violent outcome of this tragic story. Content. It was May 9th, 2015, and fate had summoned two great pugilists to Minute Maid Park Stadium in Houston, Texas, so they could settle their differences, with a clash of strength determining the superior fighter in a grueling 12-round contest. In the blue corner of the honorable boxing ring stood Canelo Alvarez, at the tender yet dangerous age of just 24, already an undeniable boxing star with a truly intimidating record. His 44 victories contrasted with just one defeat, with 31 of those wins coming by knockout, made him a formidable opponent. However, the opposing corner was not necessarily any less imposing. James Kirkland was determined to give his all to prove that he could take on a true tricolor warrior like Canelo Alvarez himself. His reputation as a formidable puncher had been forged through 28 knockout victories, making up the vast majority of his 32 total wins. Because of these statistics, one of the most ferocious battles of the year was expected. The American, in his record leading up to the fight, had added 5 knockouts to his professional history, proving that he was a tough opponent both in and out of the ring. After all, Kirkland had spent some time in prison on more than one occasion, making him someone to be wary of. Many often labeled him as a Texas thug, and he, far from being shy, enjoyed fueling that reputation with his demeanor. Despite having been defeated only once before, by Floyd Mayweather, the tricolor boxer became the target of Kirkland's derogatory comments, as he confidently claimed to have more than enough in him to take down Canelo both inside and outside the ring. What the ex-convict failed to take the time to reflect on was the fact that, from that first defeat, Canelo had done immense introspective work, strengthening his weaknesses and growing even more as a boxer. This led him to restore his image with 2 consecutive victories against Mexican fighter Alfredo Angulo and another against Cuban fighter Erislandy Lara. For this reason, both fans and professionals of the sport knew that the fateful night of May 9th would witness a fight like never before. At the sound of the bell, the intensity of the fight surged almost exponentially. Kirkland sought his own path to victory, launching a series of punches from different angles in an attempt to overwhelm Alvarez. However, after weathering that initial wave of aggression, Canelo eventually managed to execute successful counterattacks, seizing the initiative and sending the ex-convict to experience his first knockdown on the canvas. A powerful right hand caused Kirkland's confidence, along with the rest of his body, to falter until he was left hanging on the ropes.
Stuck in the corner. But let's remember, Kirkland is vulnerable, especially early.
To left, lands another left. Canelo's getting hit by Kirkland, and he's stuck, wears his feet up, and forgets to stay in a responsible boxing stance.
That tells you how hurt he must be.
Well, Canelo taking his time and landing the big shot, knowing
right hand, down goes Kirkland.
By the end of the first round, it was already evident that the American was in serious trouble. After his first knockdown, he was unable to fully recover, and Canelo began punishing him with increasing severity, cornering him against the ropes and refusing to let him go until he heard the closing bell.
One thing that Pacquiao did last week is stand right in the wrong distance to win the fight.
Didn't have her. He was knocked out in the first round, and he's in jeopardy here in the first round.
Another right hand. Seeing this together brilliantly ever since the early assault from Kirkland that blocked Canelo working. John Shorley looking. Huge right hand. Left hook to the body. And Kirkland's going to make.
As they returned to their corners, there was no doubt that the opening round had been explosive, with both fighters brutally injured by their opponent. However, this was merely a prelude to what was to come, and, unexpectedly, one of them was about to be completely dismantled on the battlefield. In the second round, Canelo established himself as the clear aggressor in the fight, giving Kirkland little more than the grace of the ropes behind him to keep himself upright. He subjected the American to a shock therapy session, forcing his already battered body to absorb monstrous blows.
He doesn't throw some shots.
Tremendous shots.
How is he still here? And still trying.
Uppercut, but
He's throwing
amazing.
punches.
He can survive that assault.
He is.
Boy, Triple G talks about when it says Mexican style. This is Mexican style.
Kirkland seemed unlikely to survive until the end of the round, as the Mexicans' relentless combinations were turning that goal into an uphill battle. Canelo was not just targeting the body or the head, he was landing merciless punches on any open spot he could find, making the American's ordeal feel like a game of target practice, where the shooter never missed a single shot. During the final minute of the round, Kirkland attempted to give Canelo a taste of his own medicine, pinning him against the ropes and landing weak body shot combinations that resembled the desperate last kicks of a drowning man rather than a consistent effort to swim to shore. In one way or another, this brief offensive burst bought him just enough time to hear the bell.
You wonder if Canelo Alvarez is punched to avoid. They're getting hit with everything. But that uppercut lifted him.
Back in his corner, Kirkland was in far worse shape than he had been 3 minutes earlier. The second round had been a brutal battle within a war that seemed nowhere near being won, let alone finished. Both powerful junior middleweights had thrown everything in their arsenals, nuclear bombs with every punch. Unfortunately for the American, he had taken the worst of the damage. The American fighter stepped into the third round determined to prove to all the non-believers that he still had more to give, though his attempt to dictate the pace of the fight with his own fists did not go as expected. Kirkland succeeded in pinning Canelo against the ropes, executing body shot combinations that seemed to give him a chance to turn the tide in his favor. However, he did not count on the fact that the Mexican was merely lying in wait for the perfect moment to resume his attack. Canelo, with great intelligence, allowed Kirkland to showcase his skills and, with remarkable cunning, identified his weak spot, one he would exploit to prove that his technique operated on a superior level. 2 minutes had passed in the third round, and Kirkland seemed to have a greater chance of surviving until the end than in the previous episodes. But once again, fickle fate had its own plans, completely overturning all previous projections about how the fight might unfold. In the midst of his own offensive, the American fell victim to a clear and devastating right uppercut, straight to the chin, his ultimate kryptonite, which sent him face first to the canvas.
Skill over will, and Kirkland has to change that.
One of them big shots though, Jim.
And coming back.
And tell him to cut areas.
Uppercut.
He reacted only a second later, scrambling to his feet against the deafening roar of an ecstatic crowd. Canelo's heavy right hand seemed to have ended the fight. But surprisingly, Kirkland got back up, and the referee allowed him to continue, only for the Mexican to prove once and for all that third time's the charm. Canelo resumed his offensive, positioning Kirkland perfectly against the ropes to receive a vicious right hook that sent his entire body spinning before collapsing onto the mat, as if his soul had just been knocked out of his body with a single blow. With his arms outstretched and no response whatsoever, the referee knew there was no need to even bother with a standing count. The Mexican's relentless right hand had not only ended the fight, but also shattered any hopes of a glorious career for Kirkland. Although the fight lasted just under 9 minutes, as soon as it ended, people were already calling it an incredible bout. The kind that likely made Kirkland wish someone had locked him up and kept him from ever stepping into that ring. The ring announcer declared the undeniable result of the fight, an indisputable knockout victory for Canelo Alvarez, while Kirkland's soul was still making its way back into his body. Like a lady fainting from low blood pressure, the loud-mouthed ex-convict who had underestimated Canelo before the match was now being assisted, sipping on a little orange juice in the hopes that it might help him regain his senses. Meanwhile, Canelo blew a kiss to the camera and raised his fist as a symbol of his victory. Closing. If you've made it this far, thank you. Remember, the best way to support my content is by leaving a like on the video. What do you think was the turning point in this fight? Was Kirkland sentenced to defeat before he even stepped into the ring, or did he make a critical mistake after that explosive first round that sealed his fate? I'll be reading your comments.